It's the Down Beach Buzz podcast, and it's all powered by Sherry Lilienfeld of eXp Realty. Realty Sherry, she's got it going on. Go to realtysherry.com. And the podcast also powered by Paul Scollage of rate.com. He's the Senior VP of Lending for rate.com. We got another great special guest here on the Down Beach Buzz podcast. He's an entrepreneur. I hope I get all this right. I don't know how it all fits on his business card. Entrepreneur, foodie, financial guy, Atlantic City High School sports Hall of Famer, a Yale guy, Ivy League baseball. Wow. He's the man behind WaterDog Smokehouse with his wife, of course, Betty's Barbecue and Fried Chicken, Betty's Seafood Shack, all these food trucks. Is that kind of accurate, Steve Marchel, my friend?
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to be with you guys.
How is the Down Beach area changing? Margate, Ventnor, Longport. How's it changing for business operators, especially maybe restaurateurs like yourself, those who deal with feeding hungry families on vacation? You know, the marketplace has changed. How does that affect your business day to day, Steve?
I'm sure Sherry knows, and you do too, which the population is probably 6 or 8x now, where it used to be 3 to 4x in the summertime. So the capacity for whether it's food places or retail stores seems to still be growing and hasn't reached its ceiling yet. So there are new businesses that continue to open. There are more and more people in each address, it seems. That translates to more discretionary income per house in season, and therefore more ability to sustain more and new businesses down beach.
Yeah, I just think Steve brings an interesting perspective because he's from this area. He grew up here, went to Atlantic City High. His kids grew up here. When Steve went to college, he left the area for some time, but he decided to come back and then make Margate his home again.
So I moved with my ex, and at that time, one son, in 1998. So I've been here for almost 30 years, call it 28 years. And I moved my financial advising practice from New York City to Linwood at the time and bought the house in Margate. So that was 1998. In the early 2000s, I was sniffing around at doing something in Margate with the owners from Tomatoes in the early 2000s. We actually bought a property in Margate, and we were going to develop actually a seafood restaurant back then, but it didn't pan out. So we found in the last 3 or 4 years, and we don't have a liquor license at Betty's, we have so many people who drive an hour and a half to come see us. That's the biggest change as far as adding to the sheer amount of people who are now walking on Amherst Avenue, especially since Tideline opened next door to us and the other restaurants have upgraded too. So there are a number of entities that are drawing people from outside of the area. And to me, that's the biggest change. I think it would have been easier to open, call it 20 years ago, just from a land acquisition cost standpoint alone.
And Sher, what do you think about the retail, the prices of real estate along the Bayfront, one of the best business districts in the city of Margate, huh?
All year round, it amazes me that area is still very busy. Like you think it's just in the summertime, but I drive down Amherst Avenue all the time. Obviously, because I live in Margate. And
so you basically have 15 summer weekends a year. Is that where you got to put most of your focus? And is it doable that you could expand? Can that fill some of the void, some of the gap?
Yeah, we have different sleeves of revenue, and it was kind of designed that way. But clearly, we have to make hay during the season. But the shoulders of the season have expanded with each year. We opened up in May when we first opened and closed in October. Now we're opening in March and close till at the end of the year in December. So we find that as you mentioned, with catering, with the food truck, and our catering business last year we were up 2x from the previous year, and we're already up 2x this year with our bookings. So that's become a really, really important part of what we do, especially in the shoulder season, kind of October, December, and call it March to June.
So even though it seems on the surface that having a restaurant along the shore in Margate or Ventnor, that you only have so much of a selling season, in reality, food trucks and catering really, and the online stuff, the strategy that you must consider if you want to be a foodie entrepreneur down the shore?
Yeah, and it's all in the name of keeping your staff. So, we pay our staff year round, even in the months that we're closed. And we're not able to do that unless we have ancillary income coming from things other than traditional restaurant sales. So it's out of necessity that we've done that. And that stuff has grown to a point where it's a legitimate business on its own.
I want you to say that one more time because I think I couldn't believe my ears. You pay your staff year round because it's so tough to find a good staff.
Well, you nailed it. But down here, quite frankly, we've had a really hard time finding key employees who want to stay with us. And it's not just a matter of paying them well. It's a matter of giving them opportunity, potentially giving them equity in our business, which we do. If we succeed, we love for them to succeed. The biggest challenge is to keep your key people. Our kind of transitional staff changes every year. About 50% of the people come back seasonally, and then we hire 50% new people every year. Those folks are important too, but it's really the core 6 to a half dozen to a dozen people that we incent to keep with us by paying them year round.
Yeah. So when I'm listening to Steve, like what goes through my mind is, so Steve is a businessman. He's a financial man. His background is business, but he also is a foodie and an entrepreneur. And because he has all of these skills, he has a successful business with a great business model. Like that is why I believe his business does well, because he looks at it as a business, not just, oh, I love food and I love to cook food, and I love to prepare good food and serve good food. It's he looks at every aspect of his business. And that is very important for anyone that starts, like you said, an entrepreneur starting a business anywhere, including at the shore. So I remember I went to Steve once and I called him up. So this is Sustainable Sherry talking. Steve, you remember this, right? Like I called him up and I said, let's talk about your to-go packages. I want to talk about sustainable ones. And he starts getting into the numbers, we'd love to do it, but we need, the price has to be right. So, I went on my little mission to try to find something, but I think you did actually find some good sustainable packaging, right, Steve?
Yeah. Well, it's important to us, but it's only important to the extent that we can make it work and make our pro forma and our budgets be consistent. We added a different water container this year as opposed to plastic. We use cardboard now, but we also still use plastic. So we can't commit, because we don't have liquor and because we really exist because of the volume that we do. We really have to watch every penny when it comes to paper or cleaning or anything. So there's a bit of a struggle between, all of us want to be more conscious when it comes to natural products and the environment. But at the end of the day, we need a return on our investment. And so we try to strike a, kind of a happy medium there.
Talking to Steve Marchel. He's from Margate. He's the man behind the big brand names like the WaterDog, Smokehouse, Betty's Barbecue and Fried Chicken.
It's my wife and me. It's Robin and me. Taken in Rhode Island when we were doing some due diligence, touring a bunch of New England seafood shacks to get ready to open Betty's. That's Robin. That's Robin Kramer, my wife. And she is a 30-year ICU nurse who left that job to run Betty's Seafood. And now she's overseeing Betty's Barbecue and Fried Chicken as well. So,
Steve, yes, you told me that you got the idea for Betty's Seafood Shack when you and Robin were traveling.
We both love New England. We both went to college in New England, and we love the shacks that line the coast and the interior towns of New England. And I always thought that Margate and really Down Beach was missing, from a cuisine standpoint, that 25, 30 years ago. But it's really hard to sustain yourself and make money without a liquor license. So it took us a while to come up with the model, and we went to what we consider to be the best places in New England and took a little bit from each and then put our own ideas in, and here we are.
Let's switch it up a little bit, talking to Steve Marchel.
So we migrated a bunch of WaterDog menu over to Betty's Barbecue and Fried Chicken, and mostly because we thought we could run it in essence without a physical plant and without all the overhead in the Ventnor location, and get the return on investment that we needed while not committing ourselves for long-term lease or employees and things like that. And so there are synergies to be had, and we were lucky because we had different businesses that could be sustained from one kitchen. We have 2 kitchens on the bay now, one for seafood and one for barbecue and fried chicken, but the WaterDog stuff runs through barbecue and fried chicken. So you have to be nimble, you have to be creative in this environment with prices every year becoming more challenging. I mean, the three that are, rent, insurance is a killer for a small business, and not just property and casualty, but things like workers' comp. And every year they go up a ridiculous amount. And the ability for us to raise prices, let alone food prices being so expensive and labor prices going up. So you're constantly getting pounded. You constantly have to be creative, and you reach a point where the elasticity of price rises is over. People just won't pay more, even though you present a good value proposition and good quality proposition. So you have to get creative, and that's essentially why WaterDog was more or less merged into Betty's Barbecue and Fried Chicken, to take advantage of fixed costs like overhead, same kitchen, employees, and whatnot. So we have about a third of WaterDog's menu on our menu now. Still, people every week talk about why we close and we miss it and we loved XYZ, but it was, even though it was profitable, it wasn't the best use of that capital relative to other businesses.
The wild card, all your other costs that keep going up, at least you kind of know their trajectory.
Yeah.
But in terms of transportation, energy costs, fuel costs, that's the one where you got to take a wild guess as to whether it's up or down. And how do you follow that and make sure that you don't undercharge or overcharge your customers with your chicken, seafood, or hot pastrami?
So we do a close study of the market and see what successful businesses are charging, like BYO places. There aren't many like us, and then we make estimates. Like this week, we got a fuel surcharge from our trash company. There was a meaningful fuel charge. Like we can't count on that, right? Our biggest challenge is pricing food costs. For instance, let me give you an example. Jumbo lump crab meat, when we closed last year, was $29 a pound. Our cost. And now it's $40 a pound. Lobster meat, what we ended last year at $28 a pound, we started this year close to $40 a pound. So those are not small increases, 30-40% increases. We can't increase prices by 30-40%. Our strategy always has been to make it up in volume. If you go to one of the better known restaurants, anyone on Amherst Avenue that's been around a long time, they try to make their protein costs be no more than 30% of what they're charging. So if they're doing a veal chop or they're doing some type of like a lobster tail or something, they have the ability to price it at 30%. We don't. We'd be charging $45 for a lobster roll, even though we think we have the best lobster roll around, but the market can't sustain that, right? So we have to make educated guesses on, all right, how many lobster rolls are we going to sell? Is our food cost going to be meaningfully above 30%, which it is for a lobster roll? We'll make it up in volume. So that's kind of the leap that we've made. And if I were to advise anybody who was thinking about opening a restaurant without liquor, I would think very hard about that matrix that I just described.
Talking to Steve Marchel, the man behind, a part of the team behind WaterDog and a lot of other great food brands. Sherry Lilienfeld of eXp Realty. We were talking about there's all this new construction in the business districts, a lot of tear downs, which means you have to adhere to new zoning and planning rules. You got to have a mixed use. We kind of think the upper levels, the residents, they could probably be sold or leased fairly quick. But on the first level, all that retail and commercial, is there enough demand for those commercial spots that are popping up in Ventnor and Margate?
Yeah, at some point, we'll reach capacity and the bid for commercial space will either quiet down or go away. As of now, and speaking of Margate in particular, there seem to be many people who want to get into the business, whether it's food or retail or whatever. These folks who are mandated to build mixed use, I think when they do their pro forma, they count on making their money on the residential side. And then the commercial side, it's not an afterthought, but it's more of a bonus. And I think that's why I don't think the zoning laws are that detrimental to the developers. The newest, as Sherry knows, the newest building is the old Burger Bus in Margate that George Saganas' group just redeveloped, and everybody knows, I think, that Jersey Cow ice cream is coming in there. And I actually talked to those guys about potentially getting some of the space, and they were rented. The commercial stuff was already gone pretty quickly. We opened up a little ice cream hut that's part of our business on the bay called Betty's Creamy Hut. Again, that's another way to get another sleeve of income going, and also there's not a lot of like easy dessert choices on the bay. We did really well with it last year, and we opened about halfway through the season. We're opening actually Memorial Day this year. So there's a lot of demand for this stuff. When the cost becomes prohibitive, obviously, I think it'll be reflected in rent prices and how many people want to do it, but I don't see it yet. And even Ventnor, there's a lot of development going on in Ventnor now. I'm actually very bullish on particularly the south end of Ventnor. Costs are really high. There are more vacancies in Ventnor than there are in Margate, but I think there are a lot of opportunities in Ventnor right now.
How about Atlantic City? You did put a little time into Bally's,
Right.
the casino, parts of Atlantic City that look incredibly promising.
So I took a big swing and a miss with our entrance into that market in Bally's with WaterDog. I can spend some time and talk to you about why that failed. Even though we did $5 million in sales in our first year, our only year, that's probably another podcast. But my view of Atlantic City is a lot less bullish. And the macro reason is the New York casinos coming on board. I think there's a chance that, we obviously have Pennsylvania casinos that have come on in the last decade plus, but the amount of high rollers that come from the boroughs of New York are going to meaningfully change. So that's going to change, I believe, the tax base. That's going to change the viability of anything outside of the casinos with, I believe, and I don't want to paint too much of a bearish picture, but I don't see any great opportunities in Atlantic City unless you get some type of abatement from the city or from CRDA to incent you to come in there and give you some insulation for what's coming. I feel very differently about the Down Beach opportunities than I do Atlantic City. I think Brigantine actually is a place to look.
Yeah.
And real estate there, albeit is higher, it hasn't gone through the roof yet. But there's the developments that are going over there and the amount of people that are going over there. To me, that's kind of Margate Ventnor kind of 10 years ago. So if you're willing to get in a little bit early, I think there's retail opportunity in Brigantine that's as good as anywhere around here.
But I'd love to know generally how challenging it is to do a deal with a casino and big names come in and then they leave. Is it because the lease agreement's too high, too onerous, or?
So I was a little guy, obviously. They usually court national chains or bigger names or celebrity chefs or whatever. So I got courted by a great friend of mine who's unfortunately no longer with us, who was a senior guy at Bally's. Easy to get the deal done. They were incredibly accommodative as far as the terms went. Our success was based on their vacancy rate in the hotel, period. And it became very clear that it was going to be a seasonal business as far as our success went. We'd be open 12 months a year, but we'd be reliant on the summer months at this particular hotel, which was Bally's, which, doesn't have the occupancy rate of, the three big, Borgata, Ocean, and Hard Rock. Totally different animals. What happened with us, and it was mostly in hindsight, is that we were getting it done. Our top line was incredible, beyond our expectations. But at the end of the day, we had an issue with Bally's I can't really talk about, and we kind of lost them as a rabbi, as I say, and we needed them as a rabbi. At the same time, it was very difficult to run a union shop without the pedigree of being used to union employees, and I didn't have that pedigree. Big lesson for me. Wouldn't do it any other way. There's more to that story that I think will be coming out sometime this year.
Quite some insight, because when I take a look at Chicky and Pete's, Tony Luke's, some of them, I think Tony's not there anymore at the Borgata. Are they unique situations? They got in at the right time? Because certainly Chicky and Pete's looks like it's gangbusters, right?
Yeah, I think so. So there are two types of deals that the casino cut. There's a licensing deal. Tony, I don't know if this is true, but like a Tony Luke's or Chicky and Pete's will get 6%, and that's negotiable, of the sales. And the casino will control the employees, the payroll, all of the HR, and basically run the business. But Chicky and Pete's will run the restaurant and get a percentage of the top line. That's a safe way to do it. We weren't offered that deal, so we were just out there. We were going to succeed or not succeed on our own. Most of the big names are these licensing deals in the casino, and in my view, even if it's a union shop or not, I think it's easier to be successful with a licensing deal, more of the risk falls on the casino rather than the operator.
Look, whenever I've known Steve, like I said, a very long time, since my kids were little, his kids were little. I love, at being a numbers person, I love that Steve approaches his business like a business and talking about the numbers, and it's all about ROI and, you know, how to maximize your profits. And I love listening to him. And I think it was so fantastic to be able to have him on our podcast today.
You know, you get hit in the face enough, you learn a little bit, right? And that's pretty much what happened with us. We're really happy with the businesses right now.
Teachable moments, if you will.
It's one of the reasons that we like to hire athletes who have competed at a relatively high level. They're used to failure and they need to get up immediately. And that's how I raise my children. And it comes from my athletic background. We have found that how people deal with failure and how quickly they can be resilient in the face of failure is the key to a great employee.
Didn't boxer Mike Tyson say something about, what's that quote? What's that quote?
It's like everybody's fine until they get punched in the face or something like that. And man,
everybody's perfect. Everybody's great until they get punched in the face. That says it all, man. Doesn't
you
it?
know, say what you want about Tyson, but once in a while he said something that is incredibly dead on and smart.
All right, we're talking to Steve Marchel. Steve, give us a sneak peek into summer 2026. What should the Down Beach foodies look forward to from your set of properties along Amherst?
Yeah, so we've made some great additions on the seafood side, some menu additions that have proved to be very popular already. Teriyaki bowls, and we have lobster bites on the menu now. We've also, as I said, we've brought a lot of WaterDog items to our barbecue and fried chicken menu, and we're opening ice cream full time. So the dynamic down on Amherst Avenue had changed so much since we expanded and mostly since Tideline opened. And if you're not familiar with Tideline, it's the Tomatoes Restaurant Group, along with a guy named Sean Gormley, who happens to be my neighbor here in Margate, opened this incredible restaurant that's right next door to us and has brought in so much more foot traffic than previous years. Much to the chagrin of people who are trying to find parking spaces, but it's great for the operators on the avenue like us and Maynard's across the street from us and Sophia's. And so it's kind of the northern part of Amherst, which is Tomatoes, our three places, seafood, barbecue, ice cream, Tideline, and Sophia's. So as far as our restaurants go, ton more catering. Our catering menu is way more robust than it used to be. It's online if anybody cares. As I said, we have 2x times events planned already at this time versus last year at the end. Weddings, we're doing 150-person pig roast and barbecue for a corporation in Cumberland County. Stuff like that we just weren't doing a couple years ago. So the issue that people have with our place is that you can't get a cocktail, but you can go across the street to Maynard's and get one and come over, or you can bring your own, and we find a lot of people do that.
All right, say bye, Cher. Great guest. Great find there, Cher. Good catch.
Thank you,
Bringing in Steve. This is awesome. Thank you very much, Steve Marchel.
My pleasure talking with you guys. Thank you.